even though they achieve that 3D level of success, and it can be perceived as them being the most important voices in the spiritual space, they are actually the least important voices in the space. Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Rooted in the Cosmos, your podcast for all things spiritual leadership, higher consciousness, and New Earth vision. My name is Isabelle Gloria. I'm your host, and I'm welcoming you to this brand new episode. I work a lot with women who want to step into their mission, who want to start a spiritual business, who want to be known on social media, not from the desire of wanting to be famous or wanting to be known for whatever, but from a deep soul desire to create a meaningful life, to share a message, and to not live like the usual 9 to 5 that feels very mundane and pointless to a lot of awakening souls. So, what I see a lot in this group of women, I mainly work with women, so I can speak for the women, is that they look up a lot to the mainstream teachers, so to the people who are very known in the coaching industry, in the spiritual space, to the authors, to the big teachers, to those of the spiritual mentors and leaders who you think of first when you talk about spirituality. I want to shine a light on that topic today because I feel like a lot of light workers underestimate their power because they only or mostly look at the people who in their perception made it and who are very known in the mainstream spiritual field, if I can say that like that. I'm talking about people you would consider mainstream known, but it's still kind of niche. You have to be interested in spirituality, mindfulness, conscious living, and then you will know these names. And a lot of people who want to step into their own mission and who want to have a career in that way, they look up to them and think, I have to be on eye level with those people. I have to get there and I have to be as known for my work to really be valuable and for it to count. And I don't really agree with that. First of all, there is absolutely nothing wrong with having big goals or wanting to achieve a certain level of success. I feel like that is a soul choice that you make before you come here and you feel what potentially could happen in this lifetime. So, whatever you desire could potentially be true. And if you desire to become a world known author or public person in the spiritual space, I'm not saying this is not true or this is not a line for you, but what I want you to know is that even if you don't have a huge following, even if you're not mainstream known, your mission is not less valuable than those of the big teachers. It sometimes feels like that because you reach less people and you don't have the impact and the power than other bigger teachers have. But first of all, to go a little bit dark, there is also a lot of abuse and misuse of that power. So, not every spiritual teacher that is known or that is famous is actually a good spiritual teacher. A lot of them are just in it for money or for the wrong reasons. And because they reflect the collective shadow, they rise to fame and they have the impact and the power that they now have. But not every known teacher is a good teacher or a good person. That's the first thing we really have to keep in mind. Whenever something goes mainstream, we have to use discernment and be really careful about what we think about them and what they do and how they use that impact that they can have. I'm not talking about a couple of 100,000 people on Instagram. I'm talking about mainstream known people with massive power and just a lot of influence in different industries and through different ways. So that is one thing. You always have to use discernment. And the second thing is that even though they achieve that 3D level of success and it can be perceived as them being the most important voices in the spiritual space, they are actually the least important voices in the space. I said it. They are talking to, like, their messaging and their frequency is talking to a huge number of people in the mainstream. So what they reflect, what these mainstream teachers reflect, is not something that actually helps you access higher consciousness and evolve on a soul level, it most likely is like a human shadow or the collective topic, the collective shadow that is being played out on a big scale. The big mainstream teachers are not the ones leading humanity into higher consciousness. They are reflecting the level of consciousness that is currently present in the collective. That's why they get so famous. If you actually are on a level that would push humanity further and would make consciousness more accessible to them, not so many people resonate with you. That is natural. What often happens is that the work of these big teachers appeals to almost everyone who is just slightly interested in spirituality or mindfulness. It's not the real cosmic scale of what spirituality can look like. There is a good chance that these teachings that speak to so many people are talking to the current level of consciousness, of collective consciousness, and not anything beyond it. So if you think of all the very known books and the very known teachers, and I don't want to drop any names here because this is literally just general about the topic. I'm not picking on someone specific or picking someone out to talk about them. It's just like an energetic overall dynamic that I see happening. When you think of those known people, there is a handful of really good books or really good teachings that actually resonate on a very deep level. So not every mainstream teacher is just like mindfulness, love and light, but there are just a handful, literally just a few, who reach that mainstream scale, who have the potential to actually propel humanity forward into higher consciousness. They do exist. There are some big people who have like true intentions and who have good teachings and who have the depth that is needed, but they are very rare, and most mainstream teachers are just reflecting what is already there. Most people are not ready to completely change their view on the world or to completely change something about how they think and how they feel about certain things. They want confirmation. They want to be validated in what they already suspect or already feel and already know, and go a little bit beyond that. The way it resonates with the mainstream is that you create a teaching that basically reflects what they already are, but it stretches them just enough to feel part of something special and something chosen, something that is rewarding to be part of and makes them feel superior to other people. That is speaking to the ego, that is speaking to the human shadow, and that is what most mainstream teachers do. I'm not saying that they do it on purpose, it's literally a soul choice, and we also need them because, after all, these mainstream teachers also help a lot of people move forward in their own way. So it's not just that, it's neutral. It's literally neutral. But a lot of smaller creators, smaller teachers, smaller mentors feel like they need to compare themselves with these mainstream people. If they cannot rise to that level, they are a failure. And that is so far from true. If you look at success and soul missions from a soul perspective, from a real cosmic perspective, the small teachers are just as important, if not more important, than the ones that talk to the mainstream. The thing is that most people are not ready for the real cosmic scale. They want feel-good spirituality and they want a little bit of light integration work so that they can talk to their inner child and resolve some issues and understand themselves better. But literally, that level of spiritual work is what's natural to a very tapped in person. So you don't have to have a teacher for that. You don't need to read books about that. It's just emotional intelligence, like a high level of emotional intelligence that you can either learn by integration and by reflecting on yourself, or you literally incarnate with it activated within you. A lot of the women I work with are highly, highly emotionally intelligent, and they would feel bored to death by the mainstream teachings that are so popular. They just know that it's a thing that we come here with. We don't need a teacher for that. But the mainstream and the collective, the average Joe, feels very expanded by that kind of work. And for a more advanced soul, for a more awakened soul, that feels kind of basic and kind of self-explanatory. But the mainstream and like the overall of the collective is very moved by that type of work. That's why I'm also saying it's not wrong. It's not that we don't need these mainstream teachers, and it's not like it's not a good thing that they learn these basic practices and they resonate with that on a big scale. It's a good thing. I'm just talking to those of you who may feel like they are not good enough to be in this scene because they don't reach that mainstream level of recognition. So many deeply transformational teachers spend years believing that they are not good enough, or that something is wrong with their teachings, with how they speak, that they don't have the right strategy to promote their stuff, or that they're, which is the worst, that they are simply not meant for this. So a lot of people who actually have the chance and in their soul contract to make impact in the world, they give up because they see that other people with far more basic stuff are more successful. So one of two things happen. The first thing that can happen is that they try to tone down their own teachings and they go into this more mainstream mindfulness, love and light bubble of the spiritual world, and they try to teach in that way. First of all, they will not feel happy with this. They will not feel fulfilled and feel like they do something that has purpose. And it also will not resonate with people because the energy is not aligned. They are speaking about something that is so boring to them themselves that the people who are meant to be attracted by that don't even pick up on their energy. It just goes unnoticed because they are not in their true expression that they are meant to have to attract the right people. They basically sabotage themselves by believing that they have to become more basic, that they have to become more relatable, and that their content needs to be less advanced. And that is their downfall because they came here with the mission to share advanced spiritual knowledge or some type of more advanced teaching or transmissions. And what they do is not share that, but share something else that is not in their soul contracts. So they will not connect with the people they are meant to connect with and will not attract clients, will not grow a community, and will feel like they're a failure and this whole thing was never for them. The other thing that can happen is that they don't even really start. They share a little bit of their teachings, they grow a small community, and then they don't have the mainstream success that they would want to have or something close to that. And then they give up thinking that it won't work for them or that they're not good enough, that they're not skilled enough, that it's simply not meant for them and that they should go into a different direction. And they again sabotage themselves by just believing that one path has to work for everyone and they don't give themselves enough time and enough depth to actually grow their tribe and grow their community. These are the scenarios that happen to a lot of valuable transformational teachers who never make it and who never show up for their mission because they compare themselves to the wrong people. They compare themselves to voices whose role is to reflect the collective and to speak to the collective consciousness in humanity, while theirs is to move people beyond that, and that will be a smaller group. These are two completely different soul missions, and comparing yourself to that of a mainstream teacher will sabotage your own business because you are not in your truest expression. You try to replicate something that you have actually outgrown, but it doesn't look like that because we confuse the soul level alignment with the alignment in material success and in fame. So automatically, if you are a small creator and you don't have that level of success, you automatically think that the person who has massive mainstream scale success is more advanced than you and better than you and has a bigger mission than you, but that's not necessarily true. A lot of smaller creators, and small is relative, like small can be a couple of thousands in their community and can also be a couple of 100,000s, but in a specific niche. We're talking about creators who create content and who are known in their bubble, but are not mainstream famous or mainstream known in the spiritual space. They often have a far more advanced mission and a far more impactful and important mission when it comes to integrating New Earth consciousness and higher consciousness into the collective than the people who just scratch the surface for a huge mass of people. These are completely different soul missions, and they are both valuable. But what happens is that the smaller teachers often undervalue and underestimate their impact because they compare themselves to something that cannot be compared with each other. The teachers who are meant to anchor this new earth frequency are often found in the smaller corners of the internet. They often have their own niche and their own little community. They are known in their bubble, definitely, and it's a goal to get there and to be there and to show up and stand out and all the things. I'm not saying like just do your thing and invite 3 people to your home if you feel called to lead a movement. Definitely grow that movement, but don't compare yourself to the people who impact millions and millions of people. The teachers making real impact often have a few 100,000 people in their community, a few tens of thousands, maybe even just a couple of thousands, and they're still growing. But this is large enough to create meaningful ripple effects in the collective. It's still small enough to be sharing a message that the mainstream is not ready to hear. That's also a big thing. A lot of the things that need room to be expressed are things that the mainstream is not ready for. So instead of thinking, this is not for me, I'm not growing, I'm not like having this mainstream success, I should give up, I should just leave that. That is not the way to go, because we need spaces and we need the platforms to talk about these things and to share these messages that the mainstream is not ready for. Because if we don't do that, we stay stuck where the mainstream is. You have to realize that you have some type of responsibility to create these conversations, to create the spaces for these non-mainstream teachings to take place. We need those places, we need those teachers, we need those bubbles, and we need those communities where this can be a topic. But the mainstream will not resonate with that. So naturally, there will be less people attracted to you, but ironically, you probably impact the collective far more than the mainstream teachers with their light spirituality. The size of your audience or of your community says very little about the depth of your work for reasons I have just explained. Some people are here to build huge movements and reach millions with teachings that are far less deep and far less transformative. Others are here to guide a smaller group of people who are ready to step into like a completely new level of reality, who are ready for that next level of consciousness. They are far beyond what the spiritual mainstream teachers can teach them. Both of these types of teachers, the smaller ones with a more advanced message and the mainstream ones, they both are fulfilling exactly what they came here to do. This episode is not to downgrade the value of these mainstream teachers if they have pure intentions. It's more so that the smaller teachers finally realize that their impact counts too, and that they should stop comparing themselves because they have a completely different soul mission compared to someone who is speaking to the masses, who is speaking to people on a mass scale. And I'm not saying this may not change. Like as we evolve as a collective, things may shift and shape, and you may speak to a larger group of people in the next 10, 15 years, if that is truly your mission. But right now, we are at the very beginning of this collective awakening, and a lot of people are learning to trust their intuition. They are at the very beginning of learning to connect with just the beginning of their multidimensional selves, which is their intuition and their gut feeling and their emotions and their own thoughts. Like they begin to work with those multidimensional aspects of themselves, and you came here knowing all that and doing that naturally. That's why you feel often so like an alien in conversations with others. You can watch last week's episode if that is a topic for you. If you feel like you are always like socially awkward and people are always misunderstanding you and there's always like a weird vibe as if you're not vibing on the same frequency, check out last week's episode. I will link it here if I can because I talk about this in last week's episode. But yeah, that is to remind you that your role here is far more or can be far more important than the role of someone teaching spirituality 101. even if they teach it to millions of people. If you teach what you have to teach to, let's say, 50,000 people, that creates more impact than all these people just starting out to trust their intuition. As always, I hope you learned something new and that you resonated with this episode. I will see you next week for a brand new episode. Until then, have a beautiful, beautiful week.